Welcome to Interviews from Quito. We have a wonderful guest today with us, Marta Harnecker. She is someone who has been chronicling the social change processes and movements throughout Latin America for the last 40 years or so. And she's here in Quito with us because she's been invited to participate in a conference. And recently she also received a prize for the Liberator Prize for Critical Thinking for a book that she wrote that will be coming out in December called A World to Build, New Paths to 21st Century Socialism. Hi Marta, welcome to Quito. Thanks for being here. It's wonderful to have you here.
I'm happy to be here with you, Greg, an old friend of mine, and being in Telesur. I always say, well, when would come an English version of Telesur? And now we are having, or beginning to have it, and we are very happy of that.
So the first thing I wanted to start with is to ask you a little bit about one of the things that you have been focusing a lot on, which is, I think, the difference between 20th and 21st century socialism. And one of the things that I've seen you mentioned, particularly when you received the prize for the Libertador Prize in Venezuela, one of the things that you mentioned in that in your acceptance speech was the issue of the role of the emphasis in 20th century socialism of the conductor versus the conducted, which is, I think, a term that Michael Lebowitz coined, but which you pick up. I was wondering if you could maybe start with that, and as a starting ground for highlighting some of the differences between 20th and 21st century socialism.
Well, as you know, we are fighting in Latin America for an alternative society, but and we have called it many ways. Chavez introduced the term socialism of the 21st century, but there are other ways of saying that the cultural revolution or the communitarian socialism or the socialism of the good life or socialism of the life in plenitude, how you would say that?
Fullness, and its fullness.
Fullness life, as they say here. So the importance of this alternative society is democracy, democracy as one of the most important characteristics. But democracy means people's participation, means that this socialism cannot be constructed from top down. It has to be done, constructed by the people. The actors, the real important actors, should be the people. So these governments that arrives to the part of the state power, they don't have all the power as the revolution of the 20th century. They begin by the government, then the parliament perhaps. They begin to fight for winning more power. And in this fight is fundamental to the support of the people. And from the government, the creation of spaces of participation, spaces where the people could not only vote, not only be consulted, not only practice campaigns of health, of illiteracy, how you say to?
Yes.
People could participate in all that. The big thing that the people has to do is to decide, create spaces for the decision making of the people. But not only decision making, also you can decide that and nothing happened. You had to control the decisions so they could be materialized. Huh? So in this new vision of socialism, you cannot operate with a political instrument that is the one that knows everything and decides everything from top down. You have to create a different instrument, political instrument.
Well, what do you mean by political instrument exactly? I mean, I think that's an interesting question, but it sounds a bit abstract.
Yeah.
What do you mean exactly by political instrument?
Well, we talk in the past about parties. But why a party in the original conception of Lenin was the political instrument adequate to fight against Tsarism. And it was a clandestine little group, no? Very closed in itself. But Lenin didn't expect and didn't promote this kind of party for every party in the world. He saw Germany. In Germany, there was another situation. There was not a totalitarian state. So there, the Social Democrat Party, more open, was a different political instrument that was needed. So the problem is that we have copied the Bolshevik Party, that left, the Marxist left, Leninist left, no? And apply this to our countries, where there was a different situation. And now, more, we have a situation where we are fighting for the transition to socialism from the government. So we have to think which party, but I prefer political instrument, because could be a party with a front, with social movement leaders in this political instrument, working with the party. So it's a more flexible way of organizing a political instrument that has to orientate, do the program. The program, we see in the world people fighting against neoliberalism. Masses of people in Egypt, in Spain, some countries of Latin America, no? But it's not enough to be in the street. We have the experience in Latin America, in many countries, where the people in the street could get governments out. But then when a new president comes, repeats the same political regime. To construct a new regime, we need a program. And the program doesn't come like from the sky, has to be constructed. The political instrument should construct this program, should analyze the situation, the correlation of forces, should see how to fight against the very powerful enemy that we have, see the strategies, the tactics. These are things that has to be done by a political instrument. So that should be, as our vision of socialism is a participatory democratic socialism, the political instrument should be an instrument that promotes participation, facilitates participation, must not supplantar, how you say?
Replace
replace the creativity of the people. Must abandon the idea that the party has, or the political instrument has the truth, and people has to obey that. This command top-down style of our militancy in the past should be overcome. No?
Well, it seems like what you're saying is in a way a middle path between two kind of extremes in this debate about how to organize social or socialist transformation, because for the past 10 or so or 20 years maybe even, there's been a very strong tendency within the left to say, let's forget about the state and let's just organize, just focus on social movements, on building an alternative outside of the state, without the state and against the state.
No, I think it is a big error, because one of the big problems that our progressive government has today is those people in the left that doesn't understand the new situation we have when we have a government that wants to transform the country. We many times the political leaders of the past or the political leaders of the social movement doesn't understand the difference with this government. So they say, we have to continue fighting against the bourgeois state apparatus. No? That was our goal in the past, to destroy the apparatus. Now we are, by a new way of doing things, we are initiating the process with governments that wants to help the people to construct a new society. So there should be a dialectic relation between government, parties and social movements, leaders, that together construct the correlation of forces we need to change, because we are in a very limited situation with the state apparatus inherit, with the culture that has been inherited, with that is everywhere in the head of the leaders of the parties that are supporting the government, the leaders of the movements. No? We have a left that knew how to criticize the governments, the ancient government, and we need a left that has to construct solutions, proposals. No? So it's a very different situation, and I forgot the beginning of our, you can remember me, we are talking about...
Well, the political instrument. So
yeah.
this is the political instrument that would achieve this combination of working with the social movements and working within the government. In transforming the state and transforming society.
And it is not, because one of the critiques that those of the ultra-left that doesn't understand is, thinks that if you support the government, you are gobernero. You know, I don't know which word in English.
There's no good equivalent.
It's like in the unions, the leaders of the union that support the patron,
the owners, the managers.
Yeah, they think that that is a bad thing. They don't understand. They have to support, but not support without any criticism. We should support, but be very attentive to the deviations, to the weakness, and always pressuring the government to go in the line of the society we want to construct. So the governments, this government, has to understand that the movements, organized movement that pressure the state had to be bienvenidos. Welcome, not destroy. No, because many times the government cannot do some policies if they don't have the support of the people. For example, in the ALCA situation, when
the free trade agreement of the Americas,
when the governments didn't want, some progressive government didn't want to sign that treatment, but they didn't have the correlation of forces. Then when it was organized, the popular consultation, and people were going house to house, convincing people why it was necessary to fight, and they did this consultation that was not a legal consultation, but it was a political consultation. And they saw that 73% here, in Argentina also, etc., in Brazil, many people were supporting. Then they could have, with the support of the people, a different position. And finally, we have not signed that. That was one of the first steps of our sovereignty. But this was not a question of governments. That was a question of governments supported by organized people. I think that is one of the more important things we have to learn from the government, and learning, and also people.
Well, that brings me to the other topic, which is to get more concrete as to what is going on in Latin America. And I know you've focused a lot on the governments or the countries of Venezuela, Bolivia, and Ecuador in the last couple of years. And I was wondering if you could maybe tell us a little bit of what you see as being the key points, the key distinguishing features of each one of these governments, particularly as regards their relationship, that is the political instrument functioning in each one of these countries, and how it is functioning, and trying to work through some of these dynamics that you're talking about.
Well, I would say that one of the weaknesses of the three countries is the political instrument. So I prefer to say which are the differences that I see in the three governments. And I think that Venezuela, Chavez, the proposal of the socialism of the 21st century was centered in organizing the people. Chavez knew, and he says, we cannot resolve the problem of poverty if we don't give power to the people. So he knew that from the state, he couldn't do that alone. He needs the correlation of forces in the world, in Latin America, the integration, but he needs also the people organized. So the big, I think, when you say which is the legacy you say, of Chavez, the most important for me was the creation of spaces of participation where the people could grow in their development in self-esteem, in consciousness, and could begin to decide what to do in their communities. In the first step, the practice by the people of the decision-making, that is to create the subject that we need for the new society, because we need people that are able to analyze, to be informed, analyze, decide, and control and plan. He gave money to the people, but he didn't give the money to the people in a populist way, as other governments in the past. He said, well, we have this money, but you have to organize yourself first to plan what to do, to decide the thing that you needs more, and then with this plan, with this project, you receive the money. Well, that for me is the most important, lesson or that we have to learn from that country. In Bolivia, we have the relation of what Garcia Linera speaks about, the governments of movements. So this relation of Evo Morales as an ancient leader of the social movement of the indigenous peasant movement, and his comprehension about the importance of social movements in constructing this new society in Bolivia. And I think that we have to learn from Evo how to deal with the social movement. Well, you know, they have in the government a space of consultation with the leaders at Coralcam. I don't know if you, they have construct something in the government to have the voice of the different social movements. And also, Evo understands when there are massive mobilization, social mobilization against some measure that he has taken, for example, the gasoline price, I think, no? Well, he saw that it was a wrong measure, and he went back, you say?
Yeah, step back or retreated.
So this understanding that you have to construct an alternative with the movements, and accept and recognize that you could do errors, so to understand that the movements are helping, not destroying. Because in the past, the idea was, well, you have elected me, let me govern. That is not what we need in the government. We need government that says, you have elected me, I need your help to construct. No? So here in Ecuador, and I have done a book about this experience as of Bolivia and Venezuela, we see the efficiency of the government, promises that are
implemented,
accomplished, you say? No?
Or implemented.
Implemented. I think that is one of the important things. And also, I think that is the government that is more ahead in the media fighting. So I think that in his program, in the Saturday program, this space dedicated to criticize the opposition media, no? By explaining to the people that this is what they say, this is the truth, see how they lie, he do a pedagogy of the critique of the press. And one of the other challenges that this government has is to have a media that is credible. Because the problem we have is an opposition media that distorts reality, and a media of the government that says only the good things of the government and didn't put a microphone for the critique. And Chavez, in his last months of life, he insisted we have to put a microphone to the people. The people could alert us of the errors. So these are things that, well, I have learned. You know, all what I do is learning and plasmar. O sea, my books are product of the learning that I have in all these countries. No?
The other thing I want to ask you is about the problems that have resulted, particularly in Venezuela, but also in other places, when the managers of certain state enterprises have resisted the efforts of the Chavez government, or now Maduro government, to implement workers' management, where they respond basically that, well, the workers don't really know how to manage, and what, you know, that's going to result in mismanagement and so on. What is your response to that kind of an argument, which is, in a sense, touches on the essence, really, of 21st century socialism, which is to turn power over to the people?
Well, the first thing, you know, is in Yugoslavia, when they have the self-management, it was demonstrated that workers could manage in a certain way because Tito says workers would be able to manage against that argument. No? But it was demonstrated that also it was needed knowledge, because if you don't formate the workers, what happened is the participation in a moment, the worker says, well, those who knows has to decide some things. No? Well, the argument against participation of the workers is that if you give the enterprise to the workers, the result has been negative. It was negative, Álvaro García Linera told me, in Bolivia, when they tried to give the some little industry to the workers, and it didn't function. In Venezuela, the opposition says, oh, see the economical results. But the problem is that it's not to say, the workers don't know, so the technocrat should direct enterprises. What we think is that workers know some of the process more than the technicians because they are living in the process, but they need a knowledge. So our position, and Álvaro García one was, well, Álvaro García says, well, this didn't result, but we don't deny the necessity of doing that. What we are going to do is to prepare the workers. So I think that it's important to prepare the workers to self-management.
Well, it seems to me one thing, one distinction one would have to make is between certain knowledge, that is knowing how the enterprise functions, how the economy functions, how the production process and all of that functions. It's kind of the knowledge, that you can learn out of a book. And there's the other aspect, which is the skill, the actual skill of learning how to manage. But one of the things that concerns me perhaps is the danger, of course, that they might learn the same management skills that the managers have. That is, if the manager sees management being just about telling everybody what to do, to give orders, that's one thing. That's a certain type of management. But another requires a completely different skill, a completely different type of management to manage in a participatory manner, in a way that includes everyone. I just wanted to hear what you think about that.
No, because if they're doing the practice, then the knowledge that they need will be determined by their needs. And there are technical things, for example, how to calculate things, how to see the market, how to analyze the deterioration of the machines. No? These you can have objective knowledge that could be assumed by the workers. For example, in the machine replacement, well, the technocratic answer for that will be, we have to have the new machines. The workers knows that the new machines will liberate, the unemployed, produce unemployment. So they could say, well, we should arrive to that, but we have first to do a step, but not so technological advances, and prepare workers to another
task.
Task
or work.
Yeah. So this is, you see, and it's a different. It's a worker's vision of how to implement technology.
Well, to conclude, I just want to ask one last question about how do we get there? How do we make sure that the managers and the governments actually are willing to implement these kinds of changes that are participatory, that include the workers and include a gradual transition towards this kind of worker management and giving power to the people, which I think has been part of the problem that there's been a lot of resistance, particularly in this middle level of governments and of businesses.
Well,
state-owned businesses.
It's clear that one of the big challenges our governments have is how to do a cultural transformation of the managers and of all the officials of the state, all those who has a work in the state. We have to think that we need that, and I think that the way to do that is to open the process to popular control, so the workers will be attentive of what the managers do. And one of the first things that has to be done is to permit the workers to pronounce themselves who will be the managers. perhaps not that the workers decide the name, one name, and is the name that the government should accept, but perhaps the government could propose names, or the workers propose names, and the government decide the better. No?
Or
so
a
they
recall
have to-
process, perhaps.
Huh?
Or a recall process, perhaps.
Yeah, sure. So popular control, I think, is one of the ways of dealing with this problem. But we need a cultural transformation of the workers also. We know that all our society está permeada
It's permeated.
by the culture, inherited culture. So there should be, the culture transformation is essential to our processes, and should we think about that, because sometimes we think about the economy, we think about these many material things, and we don't think how to transform the people. And the people transform themselves by the practice. That's why also the spaces of participation are so important. And it's so important that some measures of the government that are dealing with the needs of the people will be consulted with the people. For example, Maduro now is convoking the participation of all the people of Venezuela about the price of the gasoline. That's a big problem. No? It is not decided, or he decided, that not the technician should decide what price, but the people. Nobody wants a higher ticket, but people are thinking, well, it's true, we need to pay more. But it's different when the people says we need to pay more than a technician says you have to pay more.
Right.
No?
Okay. Well, thanks so much for being here. It's been a pleasure, and I hope we'll have another opportunity to talk again in your visits to Quito.
Thank you, and I hope so also.